Welcome to Creature Geek, the special effects makeup podcast from a fan and pro perspective. I am Len Peralta.
And I am checking my email. Frank Ippolito.
You are checking your email. What is up with that?
There's more jobs floating around the shop right now than I think I've ever had. And it's kind of awesome.
He's got to pay attention to all of that.
he's running a shop.
Well, no, I spend more stupid time in the office here checking emails and replying to stuff than I do out there on the floor building stuff anymore. It's driving me nuts. So what I've been doing is every evening I've been pulling part of my crew in here and we've been podcasting with them. That's right. So go ahead and do your intro, Len.
Yeah, there you go. What you're saying is Creature Geek is a way for you to sort of multitask, is what you're saying. So.
Yeah.
So you may hear our guest in the background there. Today's guest is a special effects guru whose career spans more than a decade. He has worked as a puppeteer on shows such as
Three decades.
I'm sorry. Three decades.
All right.
He has also worked as a puppeteer on shows such as Team America, World Police, Spider-Man 2 as the Arms of Doc Ock, and Stargate SG-1. He is the lead puppeteer on Yamasong, March of the Hollows, which is currently in production, and we'll talk to him about that today. Would you please welcome to Creature Geek, Mr. Frank Langley.
Hi.
Hey, what's going on?
Good Frank and evil Frank.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to tell you which one's which.
It's interchangeable.
That's right. We always, every time we have
on the
more
day
than
and
one
who you
Frank
ask.
on here, it's like a little bit confusing.
Well, we'll have to get another Len in here one of these days.
That's right. Do you know any people working in effects named Len?
I know one. Puppeteer. Len Levitt.
There's a Lenny McDonald.
I don't know that one.
We'll get them on.
He works for Joel Harlow now these days, I think. I don't know. All right, anyways.
Yeah.
So anyway, I apologize about cutting your career down by 20 years.
Oh, no, that's cool.
It was a little bit difficult to find stuff about you. There's not a whole lot written, so I'm going to learn with the audience today. So
cool. No, I'm definitely one of the under the radar kind of guys. I'm not a big self promoter in terms of of being out there and look what I've done for the past 30 years. So
not only are you under the radar, but you're also literally under the table, puppeteering. And
a lot of times, yeah.
That. So
that's been some of the fun part of my career. Has been making creatures come to life, and it was a surprise to me. It wasn't something that I came into intentionally. I came into puppets actually through art directing. I was an art director on a puppet show in Florida, in Miami, before I moved to LA. And there was something cool about the scale of it all. And I hadn't really been exposed to it. I'd seen The Muppet Show and I'd seen the movies of, Labyrinth and Dark Crystal, and I thought they were pretty cool. But this particular show, a friend of mine needed someone to help create these things, and none of them knew what they were doing. The creator of the show, the puppeteers they got, this was a bunch of newbies who you're like, hey, let's make a puppet show. And and I'm glad that they didn't know what they were doing, because I didn't know what I was doing either at that time. And so it was kind of a perfect team. But we learned a lot, and we cut our teeth on making cool puppet stuff. And there were days on the set when we would have more than the cast of characters of the puppeteers that they'd hired to be in it, like the big chorus numbers in the end of the show kind of a thing, where they wanted all the puppets to be on screen at the same time. And in that moment, they would get whoever had hands, and as an art guy, I've got two of them, put a puppet on your arm and go stand behind a bush and bring the puppet to life for these big chorus numbers. And I remember sitting there, looking at the monitor and trying to figure out which one was my puppet on the dot. And there was something intoxicating about it. So when I moved out to LA, one of my first gigs, and I was really lucky, again, it came through art department. One of my buddies on the crew I was on was married to one of the key people over at the Henson Creature Shop. And he'd said, hey, they're actually looking for people for a series that they're working on. You've got some cool puppet stuff in your portfolio. Why don't you go over and talk to Henson? And I did, and I hadn't actually built a puppet leading up to this interview. So the weekend before my interview, I got a blanket that I had and a juice bottle and some doll eyes, and I built a puppet before I went into my interview. And I showed him some pictures and of the stuff that I had done. Then I showed him my puppet, and they're like, yeah, okay, you're good enough. Go to that table over there. Yeah. And I ended up being at Henson for about 4 years as a builder. So that was my first real puppeteering. Well, it's funny, I can't even say I was puppeteering there, because Henson had a weird line that if you built for them, you couldn't puppeteer for them.
I don't get that.
I don't either.
I've never understood that, because so many times the people that build the puppets they know how they work almost better than a puppeteer.
That was my case in terms of being there. One of the things I heard it explained by Brian at one point, because I asked him, I'm like, hey man,
You're talking Brian Henson.
Yeah, Brian Henson, exactly. I asked him, like, so what's the deal with this? Because you're saying basically Geppetto's not allowed to work Pinocchio, and his attitude on it was that because Henson puppeteers were only puppeteers, that they weren't hindered by the building of the process, or the building process of the puppet, that they wouldn't hold back on their performances for fear of breaking something or something like that. So he felt that their attitude in terms of puppeteering, they'd be more free if they weren't attached to how it was built. And I felt that was kind of backwards, because a lot of times we built these really complicated creatures and they'd go out on the set, and we in the shop who had spent hours and hours and hours putting these things together and trying to figure it out and making sure it worked before we handed it off to a puppeteer, would hand it off to them, they'd get to set and they'd had very little practice with it and not know how it worked, and then go, hey, this puppet doesn't work, and send it back to the shop. And,
or would you build in things that like they didn't even know that it could do? Like...
Oh yeah, absolutely. There were definitely things that we'd show them, and it was a real frustration for me. I found out that I'm a good puppeteer. I'm really intuitive in terms of movement. And so I'd see these guys struggling with this thing that I knew how it worked perfectly, and I'd go in, hey, how do it this way, and they're like, hey man, sit down. We're the pros here. And so there was a real attitude dynamic, or power dynamic between the puppeteers and everybody else.
That's so weird.
Yeah, and I didn't like it. And so after 4 years there, banging my head up against a wall trying to puppeteer, I had to leave Henson to be a puppeteer, which is pretty weird, right?
That is weird.
Yeah.
Do you find that the two are mutually exclusive? Do you find that puppeteers are usually good actors, or do you find that they're kind of separate?
I think you have to be a good actor to be a good puppeteer.
Okay.
Depending on the type of puppeteer you want. A lot of times, like the Muppeteers, those guys, they're really good at improv, and their improv class, they feel that it's easier for them to train an improv artist to be a puppeteer than to hire a puppeteer and train them to do improv. It's kind of a weird thing. So depending on what you want, for me, I tend to do a lot more creature type movement as opposed to Muppety type stuff. I'm not.
Right.
I'm not into doing the improv voices and coming up that with the characters and the dialogue thing. I like bringing an animal to life. I like something that's or a monster, something that's just when you look at it, it has to move right, and I like figuring that stuff out. That's really appealing to me.
And everybody here should know that you are one of the Foster Farms chickens that when Rick Lazzarini gets those commercials.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, there's four of us. Okay, if you're not familiar, Foster Farms chickens are a West Coast thing, and they have this campaign that's been running for 20 years now. And for the first half of the campaign, they only saw the chickens from the top half. Muppet style is just like waist up.
Yeah.
And so they had gotten to a certain point where they got a new client, and they wanted to have the new agency wanted to be able to show the puppets from the waist down as well. They wanted to, show them running and doing those other things. And my specialty at that point is something called Bunraku, which is a kind of a Japanese style of puppeteering that it's 2 or 3 people work an entire puppet. One person's on the legs, one person's on the arms, one person's on the head, kind of a thing. So I'd figured out a rig for the Foster Farms chickens, along with a couple other people. I can't take full credit for it, in terms of how to bring the chickens to life with arms and legs and everything moving at once. And as a result of being one of the guys who brought that aspect of it to life, I was asked to be one of the team puppeteers when the campaign continued from there on out. So dubious honor, I'm a chicken, and it takes 2 people to work them. One guy works the head, one guy works the arms, so I'm the flappy.
And does Lazzarini just eat the craft service?
You know what? We all indulge in the craft service, absolutely. And Foster Farms is great because they do tend to bring good caterers and good craft service to the table. So it's always it's a fattening job every time we go.
Have you seen the video that's been making the rounds recently of that one puppeteer who it's like a
the two-handed
tiki guy? Have you seen that?
It's pretty charming. Yeah, I think he did a really good job with it. It's I'm glad he's getting some recognition for it. I built something similar around his age as well, and it's nice to see that type of thing is.
If only you had YouTube, you'd be a sensation right now.
Yeah, if that
so
had
that
been
isn't
around.
necessarily brand new technology, is what you're saying. It's just a different take, or Or
It's
is
different. It's it's a finger puppet. You know, he was clever in that. You know, he turned his one hand down and one hand up, and
Right.
it's not a typical configuration, and he's able to get a lot out of it. I mean, I remember there's a lot of cutouts that I remember as a kid that would come on the back of cereal boxes
Yeah.
that
You put your
you know you
fingers
put your
through it.
fingers into it and you can make it walk around. So I think it's kind of you know an evolution of that kind of a thing. I think he did a great job. I think that it's a cool looking puppet and it's fun to watch it
Yeah.
work. So yeah, you know, applause.
So what we really want to hear is Team America stories.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like Team America is one of my favorite movies in the universe, and I think it's one of the movies that's on my list of flawless films. And so you were actually telling this the other day. We were all drinking some beers and hanging out in the shop later in the day on, what was it, on Saturday, I
Yeah,
guess?
Saturday, yeah.
And you were telling about how Team America ended up to the Kyoto Brothers and how you ended up getting pulled in.
Oh, sure.
Do you mind telling that again?
No, that's cool. No, it's kind of complicated because originally the puppets were being built at another shop before it came to the Kyoto Brothers, and they had gotten to they'd gotten to a point where they'd spent probably 2/3 of the money in development to get it to a place to build all the puppets, and then Paramount asked them to do a video test to actually perform the puppets, and they got some class A marionettes, and I think the real issue was that marionettes are hard, and they thought it was going to be easy. You know, when Matt and Trey first pitched the whole thing, you know, they had gotten they'd cut together some clips from the old Thunderbirds show. They put 5 minutes together, and then Trey just changed all the dialogue and it was super funny. And then when they did their own version of the sex scene when they were doing the test, literally it was one of them holding up a Barbie and one of them holding up a Ken, and they kind of did the scene together, and they thought, oh man, this is going to be a breeze. But then they, you know, when we got to set, marionettes are hard. So when the first company had done the test with Paramount lost confidence in them because of how long it took to get just a couple of minutes of this marionette.
And that first one was Spotswood.
It was Spotswood, yeah. It was Spotswood in the dressing room with Gary. That was the first scene that they had tried to.
So they built Spotswood and Gary, or just?
I think they had built just Spotswood originally for that, just for the test. But they were so frustrated with how long it took to do it. They were like, "You guys, we've lost confidence with the way you're going to do it," and they sadly pulled the plug on that particular team and started shopping it around to other shops, and that's. And the kind of the deal, as I remember it, was around the rest of the shops. They're like, okay, we've only got a third of the money we originally budgeted this left to finish it. So would you be willing to take on this project from somebody else's shop who's already done all the engineering for it, and then, you know, take it to the end zone? And, you know, Ed Kyoto had read the script, and it was brilliant, and it was super funny, and it was impossible, but it was also one of those things that you're like, we have to do this job because it's the South Park guys, and it's going to get a lot of press, and it's going to be great. So at that moment, when Ed had gotten the call, I was literally standing next to him, and he's like, hey, do you want to coordinate on this puppet movie? And I'm like, yeah, I do. And it was kind of a nice thing because I had worked with the DP for Team America, Bill Pope, on Spider-Man 2, and the whole team, actually, like his camera team and the lighting team. It was they basically took that entire team from Spider-Man 2 and brought them right over to Team America. So I'd already had a relationship with that part of the crew coming into the meetings, and I think that gave me a little bit more credibility when I came into the meetings over at Paramount with Matt and Trey and the producers and all the department heads to walk in and to already know Bill and to know this guys, and they're like, oh, your first name basis. It was really great. It was nice to walk into that and make it go. But man, Team America, that was the hardest job I've ever had in my entire life. It was so hard.
Well, I guess I got to work harder on bringing in crazy jobs.
I prefer working smarter and not harder.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, I'll keep doing what I'm doing.
So what made it
I'm
more?
doing.
What made that so challenging? What made that show so challenging?
Well, one of the big factors, again, like I said, with marionettes are really hard to work. They don't do anything. in terms of what you expect them to do. It's not like a Muppet. A Muppet you can put on your hand,
Right.
and you instantly have a lot of movement because your wrist can do things, and you can make the wrist move the neck, and you can open your hand and make the mouth open and close. And if you want to have the hands move, you've got your other hand close by, and it's really easy to move the pieces around. With a marionette, it's on the end of a string, and you're anywhere on Team America in particular, you're anywhere from 2 feet away from the puppet to 20 feet away from the puppet.
Huh.
And the farther you are away from a puppet, the harder it is to control it. And so any of the times you see the puppets in the background in Team America, it's somebody in a condor lift that's way above the stage, looking down at this dot on the floor, and they're being asked to hit a mark. And when you've got something on a string that's 20 feet away from you, it's going to be more like a pendulum than it's going to be like a puppet.
Right.
You move it a little bit, it's going to start swinging. So it was
that gave it the charm.
It was a lot of charm. I think one of the biggest frustrations is that we had hired some really great puppeteers. I mean, fantastic marionettes. These guys who had done it as careers for a really long time, and they were being asked over and over again to take this craft that they had perfected and really dumb it down. And as an example, like if you guys have seen Being John Malkovich.
Yeah.
There's only like 6 minutes of puppeteering in that film with the marionettes, and I want to say they spent like 6 months rehearsing those 6 minutes to make them beautiful and flawless. And going into Team America, we had some practice time at the shop while we were building puppets to try to figure out how things would work, but we literally had no rehearsal time going into it. We'd go onto the set and they'd go, okay, we wanted to do this, and we'd have a little while that we'd figure out, okay, this is how it's going to hold a gun, and I think if we put the string here, it might hold it in this direction. And so we'd get to set, we'd start shooting, they'd get frustrated because it wouldn't do it immediately, and so pretty much we'd move on from one sequence to the next sequence with this sort of like dejected, okay, I guess we got it. Let's go on to the next thing. Yeah, and it was really sad because there was definitely all these guys who really wanted to do a good job. Give us one more take, give us 2 more takes, let us practice it a couple minutes. But the production needed to move, and like all productions do, the more time you spend on something, the more money it costs, and it was getting costly to do it. But it was a good challenge. Everyone was working really hard. I think Matt and Trey are good guys, but they're like spoiled 4-year-olds. They're used to doing their show in a week and everything start to finish. And for us to come in and have to figure everything out on the spot, well, it was hard. It was hard on them. They didn't like the process.
And then they keep wanting to you'd have like script pages set out, and they were like, no, we're going to change what we're
going
to
do. That was the hardest thing. When we first started setting it up, originally they were going to pre-record all of the dialogue for the puppets, and then we would do playback and then have all the mouths and all that stuff move to playback. And we had a full setup. We were a team setup that were doing the recordings, and then they'd program the mouths to make them work right. And then we'd get to set, and then Matt and Trey like to improvise. And so it ended up, Trey with a microphone and a thumb switch to make the mouth open and close. And he'd sit there and do one voice on this side, and then do another voice on the other side. And that would be it. We'd make it up on the spot. And so, we'd spend all this time putting the script together and putting these moments together for them. And then they'd throw it out the window and go right into improv. And that was the same with when we got to our shoots. At the end of the day, like with any production, the assistant directors and the directors would get together with the crew, with the department heads, and say, okay, this is what we're going to set up for tomorrow. Get your team together, set it up. Well, we had an entire night crew that would come in. And after my conversations with Matt and Trey and the ADs, I have my list. I go get my night crew. I'd say, okay, these are the characters that are going to be up in the shot tomorrow. This is the dialogue. These are the costumes they're going to wear. This is the set they're going to be on. This is the action we want them to do. And they'd spend all night prepping these puppets for the sequence. And we'd get there in the morning all ready to go for the sequence that they'd want to do. And they'd go, nope, we're not going to do that scene. We're going to do this other one instead. And that was every day, every single day. That it was really hard on us because the night crew felt like they weren't doing anything that was meaningful at all, because they'd spend all night making something, and we'd go, okay, nope, we got to take it apart. We got to do this other thing instead. And
of course, there's no money to make one of multiples of every single pup,
no,
enough multiples.
No, we had
the wardrobe.
Yeah, well, they had a lot of wardrobe and a lot of bodies. They spent probably more on wardrobe than they did on the puppets themselves, because
Oh.
there were, I gotta say, they're almost close to 900 characters or something like
Holy
that.
Jeez.
Yeah, there were a lot of characters in the film, but we only had, I'm guessing here, it's been 10 years, 20 or 30 fully animatronic heads. So there was constantly skin replacement and eye replacements to move these heads from body to body for sequence to sequence. And when we were doing just one unit, it was pretty easy. But as the production got farther and farther behind as we were going, they added a second unit. And then after the second unit, they added a third unit. So we'd have 3 units running all at once. And we only had a certain number of heads to do this. So we didn't have duplicates of characters. So we were scrambling sometimes to like, okay, if we needed Lisa on this set and we needed Lisa on this set, we had to somehow create a Lisa from one of the background puppets to have on the other set. So yeah. And
at least you were close by, right? You could.
Oh yeah, we were shooting in a warehouse in Culver City. And so, it was fascinating to look at the sets. I still marvel at the art department on that team. Huge applause to those guys, because you'd walk onto set and there'd be Cairo over in one corner, Paris over in another corner, and then Mount Rushmore over someplace else. And so just by walking around this warehouse, or in different parts of the world, for the puppets, it was groovy. It was really fun to see, to do those things.
That you got onto that because of working on Spider-Man 2, kinda.
Yeah.
So you were one of the guys in charge of Doc Ock's arms, right?
Right. There were 16 of us. I was one of the 16 puppeteers on Doc Ock's.
16 people for 8 arms? For
4 arms. It took 4 puppeteers per arm.
Really?
Yeah.
How did that work?
All right. So, if you guys remember the tentacles themselves, the part that opened, the claw part, was a full cable control, animatronic. And we built these thrones. Bill Bryan, who's a genius, came up with this idea of having one person sitting in a chair with these big handles, a left hand, a right hand, and then foot pedals to make it work. So the
mouth,
I guess you'd call it a mouth, but the claw itself had 3 fingers that open, and like the right hand, when you pulled it open, it was the center joint, and then the left hand was the fingertips, and then the right foot was the lower jaw at the base, and then the other foot was the upper jaw at the base. So in this
wow, that's insanity.
Yeah, it was like driving a manual Volkswagen, to make the head move, to make the fingers move on the claw.
That was one person.
That was one person. And then we had another person that would either stand literally right under what we called the wrist of the tentacle. They'd either have a rod standing right there and they'd be able to control it from the rod, or we had a crane that we built. We built 4 cranes for these things that you could be at a distance from them, and then they could make the head move around with this crane. And then, so that was another puppeteer. And then the other 2, the loose part of the arm, we had cables that went off in 2 directions that would go into loops, into pulleys on the set, and with these dog leashes that we could extend, 20-foot dog leashes. And so they would just create tension on the tentacle itself. So as one guy's making the fingers open and close, one guy's making the wrist find its place in space, and then the other 2 people are basically holding tension to allow the tentacle itself to either drop at its elbow or raise back up. So that was pretty much how we had 4 people just per tentacle. So when it was a dance, we had 16 people all around all around Alfred Molina, making all of the tentacles work at once.
And we were all wearing those really flattering green suits.
Yeah, sometimes they were black, sometimes they were green. They tried to keep us out of the shots as much as possible. Most of the time it was cable stuff.
So that was a Sam Raimi choice to use puppeteers as opposed to make them CGI.
Absolutely. Thank God for Sam, because right over Sam's shoulder was John Dykstra, who at that point had fallen in love with CGI, and his team was like, whispering over to Sam's shoulder over the time, hey, we can do this better in post. We can do this with CGI. And we were worried the whole time that all the stuff we were doing was just going to be expensive reference for the CGI guys. And they set us up. I think they were kind of hoping we would fail. And they gave us an animatic of the hospital sequence to start with. This was over at Steve Johnson's Edge Effects. And they said, okay, you guys have some time to work this out. Here's this animatic. Give us as many shots out of this animatic that you guys think you can pull off with the puppets. And we were determined. And we gave them back an animatic where we did pretty much every single shot. And we used every Hollywood trick we could. Your camera's going backwards, turning things on its side, cables over here. Sometimes it was an arm in a glove with a fake thing on it. And we did it. And they were like, holy cow, how did you do this? And how did you do that? And they were like, okay, we're going to give it a show. We're going to see how it goes. So the very first sequence in the film that we shot was the hospital sequence. And it was really a do or die. If we failed at the hospital sequence, it was going to determine that most of the film was going to be done with CGI and that we would just be stand-ins, you know. But we pulled it off over and over and over again. Every shot, every task they gave us, we had enough time, and this is unheard of. I haven't worked on a project before or since where we had so much rehearsal time. Like the opposite of Team America, where we had none. On Spider-Man 2, I'd say we had 6 months of putting these things together and figuring out how they worked, and then spending time in a dark room, the 16 of us, figuring out how to make them all work in unison. And so we had a dance. We had it figured out. So when we got to set, we had our language. Okay, we need, you know, this particular arm that's been extended with this particular hand on the end of it, and it's going to do this kind of action. And we went in prepared and blew them away. And even it was interesting because even when we got to the end, I remember seeing the movie and was worried that, oh man, it's all gonna be CG. It's just gonna be, you know, none of our stuff's gonna show up, or maybe a couple of close-up things. And I remember I started counting shots of what I thought was ours. And I don't remember the number, but I'd say 80% of the stuff that we did with the puppets remained as a puppet in the film. And I'm really proud of that, because I look back on it and there's plenty of shots and then the people go, oh, that was CG. I'm like, nope, that was practical.
Wow.
You know what? This is funny. This goes back to the podcast that we had the other week, where I was talking about how, you know, companies like complain that all their stuff gets replaced by CG. We built all this cool stuff, and then they get all butthurt and they start yelling at CG. It's like, you know what? Do your job. You're not going to get replaced by CG.
Well, I think CG is a good tool. I see.
Oh, absolutely. I'm not like naysaying CG, but there's people out there that just constantly poo-poo it. And, you know, there's a right tool for the right job. But, you know, when you go build a whole bunch of practical stuff and then they replace everything with CG,
that's heartbreaking.
That's your fault.
Maybe.
Probably.
Okay, I'll give you.
Because if the stuff looks good and it looks right in camera, why the fuck would they spend money to replace it with CG?
That's a good point.
Yeah. I mean, producers don't want to go blowing money.
No, they don't. And I think that was one of the main things on Spider-Man 2. I remember, again, being a fly on the wall and listening to the conversations between Sam and John Dykstra. You know, I remember overhearing that a typical CGI shot, any of them, the average cost of a CGI shot was about $75,000. Yeah.
Jeez.
So, you know, that was pretty much how they had figured it out. And so, you know, we were able, with what we were doing, all they had to do was do cable removal for things. You know, that's a whole lot cheaper than replacement and figuring it all out and all the hours that they spend. So I think it really came down to money. You know, obviously, whenever you saw Doc Ock full body, if you saw his feet, if you saw him below the knees or he's climbing up the buildings, that was all CGI.
Right.
But if you saw him waist up, it was pretty much us with the real practical tentacle. I can remember like one or two shots that I went back and I looked at. I'm like, was that us or was that CGI? And I'm proud of the fact that I can't tell the difference in some of them. I'm like, dang, that's pretty good. And I think that's one of the ones that's really a good marriage. It's kind of like the original Jurassic Park, you know, that there were some places where it was obviously CGI, but there were many places I'm like, I'm not sure which technique they used right there. And I'm blown away by that. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, going back to Team America, because I can't stop thinking about that again. Have you seen the new Thunderbirds Argo?
No.
Okay, you remember Thunderbirds? The
Absolutely.
Old Gary Anderson stuff.
Yeah.
Well, it was who was it? I think it was Amazon remade Thunderbirds.
Really?
Yeah. There's a whole new, and I started seeing pictures of like sets and models coming out of Weta. I was like, holy shit, this is going to be amazing, because these models and sets are gorgeous. And then I heard, oh, they're going to do all the puppet CG. I was like, well,
what?
I get it. After hearing a lot of your stories in the past about how time consuming and expensive puppets are, I almost get it. And then I tried to watch an episode it's the most fucking unwatchable thing in the universe.
Is it because the characters are so obviously CGI? Or
I think that part of it is the writing. The writing is horrible.
Okay.
Not that any of the Gary Anderson stuff was anything.
No, man.
Like,
I researched all of those when we were doing Team America, and they put me to sleep.
Thunderbirds and Captain Scarlet and like all of those things. Like they're pretty bad, but they're awesome because like there's a nostalgia to them. But this new Thunderbirds show, like, it's like horribly styled CG puppet things. And it's
That's
just,
too bad.
It's really sad because I was so excited. I was like, oh yeah, fuck yeah, Thunderbirds.
Yeah.
What you're talking about, Frank, is the uncanny valley, right? It's like you know by looking at it that it's not a person doing that, but
And it's not a puppet, and it's not a cartoon character, and it's not a CG. It's just like this. It's this shitty valley of like, what the fuck are you trying to be? Like, I would rather them like do obvious, like, I don't know, like make it a fully CG character that's not trying to look like a puppet, or make it a fully animated thing that's not trying to pick one. I don't know. But on top of that, the story was.
But it's funny that you're able to pick up on that. You're able to pick up on the fact that there's not a human being behind this, as opposed to Team America, where there is actual people moving these creatures and people around
for every single thing.
Making Gary vomit.
It's such a nuanced thing, though, right? It's such a small, nuanced thing, but you're able to pick up on that.
Was that you running the vomit?
I helped create the vomit, and I created the pool of the shape of the vomit at the end. And I was there holding Gary in place while they were doing it. And, it was kind of like the holding your girlfriend's hair up while she's going, vomiting in the toilet kind of a thing. I was definitely, there making sure the puppet wasn't getting completely destroyed during that moment. It was really laughable because we had a huge tank of this vomit that we had created, and it was good. We kept getting these good takes over and over again. It would just pour out beautifully. And it wasn't until we got towards the end of the tank where it was just air pressure, where it started like projectile, it was like coming out. And we were like, while we were doing it, like, okay, we're out of vomit, but they were like, no, just keep rolling. This is funny. Just keep going. So all of these moments in there where it's just, spurting and blowing out it was the end of the tank. We had no more vomit in the tank anymore. It was just air shooting out of it. And it was making the puppet convulse in these ways. And, we're howling, laughing while it's happening. And I think that was one of the most fun things in terms of that Team America, is that we did laugh a lot. There was so much. It was so ridiculous over and over again. An example I remember early on, the first week that we shot, it was the Paris sequence at the beginning. And we were new to it all. We were new to each other. We were still trying to figure out how much we could get away with of real puppeteering versus it all being janky as shit. And I remember it was as early on, we were still watching dailies, and I would go hang out with Trey in his office afterwards, and I don't know how he stays awake the whole time, but he would shoot all day, and then he'd go and sit in front of his Avid or whatever it was and start looking at stuff and start cutting it together. And we were putting together the Paris sequence, and it was the sequence where the Team America, one of the members is fighting with the first terrorist, and they're about to do hand-to-hand combat. And they're just and they're just smacking into each other, and that was really and it was really because we didn't have time to coordinate the thing on set, and I remember on the day we were so disappointed with that we couldn't make it work very well, and they're just sort of like, fuck it, we'll just see how it looks. And so I remember Trey is sitting, and so Trey's sitting there, he's looking at it, and he's trying to figure out, how's this going to be funny? How's this going to be funny? And his music guy said, hey, wait a second. He went and grabbed a track of music, and he put a track of music underneath it. It was like super great action music, dun 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 dun, and it set up this expectation. And we're watching this with the action music, and it comes in, and then they smack into each other and do nothing, and we're laughing in the studio because it was so ridiculous that the music set it up, and then the puppets couldn't do anything. And we were like, all right, we're going to be fine. It's going to be totally okay. Because the three of us in that moment were just like, this is hilarious. This is stupid funny. And that became sort of the it's going to be okay attitude. We just kind of, I'd reflect back on that. You know what? I don't know if this is going to work, but then I'd remember, wait a minute. It's because it's so ridiculous that it's going to work. And again, we couldn't convey that to a lot of the puppeteers who wanted to be maestros. It was frustrating for them. But at the end of the day, we made a funny ass movie.
It's great.
There's so many more. And what about the sex scene? And what about Spotswood's dick? And
okay. We'll cover all of that. All right. The sex scene was pretty funny because we had built We actually built the puppets with genitalia. One of the versions we built 2 or 3 versions of those puppets, and we did build genitalia for Gary. And I remember, we had these tiny little penises, and we're trying to figure out, which size would be good proportional for the puppet that size. And oh my God, are we going to get away with this? And I remember Charlie Kyoto with his little, with these little penises in his hand. He's like, how red should I make the tip on this thing? And we're trying to, we're laughing at how ridiculous this is. And so I remember we started shooting the sequence, and everyone kept crowding over to the set for the sequence, and they had to treat it like a real porn set. They ended up putting blocks around the whole set to keep everyone who wasn't necessary for this moment from being there, because it was such a distraction to have all these people watching these puppets, in all these different positions doing the sex scenes, and it was ridiculously funny. It was over and over again, putting them in these positions. And okay, so the peeing on her face and the hot Carl sequence. I mean, that was intentionally put on because they knew that they would never be able to get past the censor board with this sex sequence. They wanted to keep the sex sequence in, so they were like, let's push this as far as we can. Let's do these other scenes so that we've got something to offer them. Okay, we'll cut this scene out and we'll cut this scene out, because they didn't want to cut the rest of the scene. So we intentionally put these places in so that when the people who did the censor board, they were like, okay, no, you can't have this and you can't have this. We intentionally put that there. But it's funny, because of those scenes, it's just 2 clips, those 2 moments.
Yeah, right.
The unrated version sold through the roof compared to the actual, edited version. That's the one people have, and it's because of those 2 shots, which is ridiculous.
It's hilarious.
It is hilarious. Yeah.
So you're working on a new project called Yamasong.
No, he's not. Frank's working for me.
I'm working with Ippolito right now. We're building some stuff for
Oh,
E3.
right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
But I saw on the IMDb that that's something you're working on. You're the lead puppeteer on that. Is there anything you can talk about that?
I would say one of 4 lead puppeteers.
Okay.
I definitely I want to give credit to BJ and Adrian and oh gosh, I'm embarrassed. Well, it'll come to me in a minute. I'm just drawing a blank at the moment. But there were a bunch of us that did it. It was Sam Hale, who is the director and writer of Yamasong, had created the project a few years back as a music video for a band, a taiko band, called On Ensemble. And he was friends with one of the players in the band, and they were like, hey man, we want to do a music video, and you're pretty clever, would you consider doing one for us? And he had come up with sort of a Dark Crystal looking thing. It was just, he just had, Sam's really steeped in a lot of mythology and folklore, and he likes a lot of details, and he just created this really beautiful piece to go along with this music video. And as he was putting it together, we created these really fun puppets and then created this really beautiful world. And it went on to win a bunch of film festival awards when he displayed it. Sam later went on to try to produce another one of his projects, and he had put it up on Kickstarter, and he'd found this producer who was like, okay, let me see what else you've done. And he showed him Yamasong as the music video. And the guy says, whoa, hey, wait a second. This is the thing you need to make into a feature. Let's make a feature out of this. So it was really this guy with money saying, I like your music video. Let's turn that into a feature. So that got the ball rolling on that. And because I had worked on the music video with Sam to begin with, I got to come back and be part of the feature as well. And it's the first, I hope this claim is correct, but it's the first all puppet feature since Team America to be produced, and I got to be on that one too, so it's pretty exciting. Another one,
make a distinction between stop motion puppets and actual physical real puppets.
Yeah, this was all done, with people,
live action.
Yeah, manipulating a character on the spot, and creating these moments. It's going to be pretty post heavy in terms of we did a lot of the stuff on green screen. We built partial sets for the puppets to be on, but the budget of the show didn't allow us to build really big sets. So I'm curious to see how it comes out.
Yeah.
You know,
When is it slated to come out? This year, correct?
I believe that's correct. I think it is later this year. I'm hoping. It's, you know, we worked on it all last year. I know they're deep in post production right now. I know they've got the first reel pretty much in the can, and they're working hard to see it. But I'm super proud of it. It's got a great voice cast, and it was really a team of unsung heroes coming together to do the impossible. You know, we didn't have a lot of money to make it happen. The puppets didn't get the Henson treatment or the Team America treatment in terms of the amount of money being spent on it. It was really pretty low budget, and I'm so proud of all the techs and the creatives in terms of pulling off something that looks so beautiful and looks so expensive, but was really done on a shoestring.
Can you get a taste of the feature by looking up the music video Yamasong? Is it on YouTube?
Yeah. The Yamasong is on. I know that there's also a trailer for the movie as well. The film itself is called Yamasong March of the Hollows. That distinguishes it from the music video, which was just Yamasong.
Okay.
And I think story-wise, Yamasong the music video is the original story, and then Yamasong March of the Hollows is kind of a sequel to the music video, which is kind of interesting because you're not.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's wild. It's a cool idea. I'm not sure if people will know that, or if they'll show the it's kind of like Pixar style. Do a short before you show the movie. Maybe they'll show the music video before they show.
That'd be cool. Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I think that would be pretty groovy. I don't know if that's going to happen, but I think
so now everybody is out there checking out Yamasong. I know I'm going to do it after the show and see if I can find it.
I've been quiet because I'm not a fan of Sam Hale.
I'm sorry to hear that.
That's okay.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we're all people, and
I know. That's okay.
And we do our thing.
It's okay.
Yeah. No. He's been good to me,
That's all right.
Yeah. But I think the project's really cool, and it's good looking, and I'm hoping it will bring back more people wanting to see more puppet movies.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because it's a fun technique to play, and it's a fun world to play in.
Well, let me ask you that. That's interesting. You say puppet movie, but wouldn't the Muppets be considered like a puppet film?
But they're not. Yeah, but it's not 100% puppet.
Because it's humans.
Yeah, there's humans in it as well. Yeah.
Okay, so this is 100% puppet.
It's all puppets. Yeah, there's no human cast in it at all. There's nobody. It's all puppets.
Gotcha.
Yeah. That's the distinction. That's where they're calling it different.
Well, maybe Amazon will hear this podcast and they'll have somebody put puppets in their Thunderbirds Are Go next season.
That's some real ones.
If there is a second season.
Oh God.
Well, maybe if the writings is bad. Yeah.
They need to get some writers in there, and they need to get some puppets.
They need puppeteers,
The
right?
sets are beautiful, though.
But see, that was the thing with the original Thunderbirds too. That the original Thunderbirds, I thought the models were freaking cool. As a kid, that was the thing that inspired me. I was like, oh my God, they just blew up that rocket ship. That's awesome. So maybe they just went with the same idea. Screw it. It just looks good. Who cares? Because it seems like.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing.
I think we have a smarter audience these days, and it needs to.
I think we have a smarter audience, but we still have the same dumb producers because. The thing is, because I hear it over and over again, especially with kid stuff, is that it's kid stuff. Who's going to care? The kids aren't going to care, and that's nonsense. I think kids are really sophisticated audiences, and it's sad to say, oh, just make it. It doesn't have to be perfect because kids won't know the difference. I think that's wrong.
Right.
These days, I think kids absolutely know the difference.
Oh yeah, they do. Yeah, they do.
But you guys both have kids. You guys know this stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
My kid grew up on this stuff, and
your daughter Veronica is like one of the sharpest kids I know.
And it's funny regarding kids getting it or not. She and I were talking recently about there was
she's not really a kid anymore, huh?
No, she's 17 now.
Jeez.
But when she was 9, we'd seen this movie Tale of Despero, which was a CGI version of the book Tale of Despero. And Tale of Despero, the book itself, is fantastic.
Right.
And all I had to do was just make that book into a movie. And it was one of her favorite books at the time. And I remember coming out of the theater, she was crying. I'm like, why are you so upset? She goes, they ruined it. They ruined the book. And this was someone, as a 9-year-old who came out of a movie crying because they fucked up the book she loved so much.
Show her Watership Down. Teach her a lesson. There you go. It's the same as a book.
Yeah, it's the same. She's pretty sophisticated now. She watches a lot of good stuff. Yeah.
That's funny because my son is downstairs. My 4-year-old son is watching Crayola City or something downstairs, and I'm like, I am getting out of here. I'm not watching this.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you're lucky now with the 4-year-old because we had mine was 4-year-old. We went through the Wiggles phase. I don't know if the Wiggles are still around. I'm like,
they're still around, but they're not as prevalent as they were. We went through that phase too.
I got tired of watching the Wiggles.
A lot of them.
Anyway, back to other stuff.
Yeah. Actually, we're getting. We got to have you on again because we've probably got tons more stories.
Yeah, we've only talked about a couple little. We haven't.
Yeah, we're just scratching the surface here on stuff, and we've got to have you.
Langley
back
is
on.
an onion, and we will peel back those layers.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's just like a start because I just feel like there's more stories inside you, Frank.
Well, you guys are fun. I'm happy to come talk. Yeah.
But we always ask this question to all our guests. Words of wisdom, the piece of advice you would give to a young pro getting started in the business. What would you say to them?
I would say be true to your art first and foremost. Make the things that appeal to you and make them really good. If there's something that you dig and other people don't understand it, make it awesome. It doesn't matter. So many people get it wrong in terms of interpreting things or thinking it has to be mainstream. Follow your heart and make beautiful art. That's what I would say. And in terms of getting into the business, it really is, get to know the places that do what you want to do and go make yourself known to them and be willing to go above and beyond. Listen to the people who are ahead of you. People have good advice, and I know I came in with a certain amount of attitude and tried doing things on my own. And I know better, and no, I don't. I had to learn, and if you listen, and God, I wish I had the advantage that kids have now in terms of being able to go to YouTube and looking up, how do I make this? Man, do that. Make those things. Make videos about how you made something. Show me what you made. And don't lie. That's another one. I've had plenty of people come in saying that they worked on something, and I know that they didn't because I worked on it, and I know the team who worked on it. I've had people come up to me, oh yeah, I worked on Team America. I'm like, really? Tell me about that. And we're like, well, sorry, I don't trust you. So don't make up stuff that you did. Show me stuff that you actually did. That's what I want to see. Yeah. And practice. Get good at something.
That's interesting. How much of it do you feel is luck, and how much of it do you feel is just stick-to-itiveness? You know what I mean? Like you say, go out, make yourself known to these places, but sometimes it's there's people out there who will like keep hitting their head against the wall and never be able to get and make that breakthrough. So how much is it luck, do you think?
I think there is a big factor of luck. I consider myself very, very lucky in terms of being in the right place at the right time for a lot of things. I mean, Team America is a perfect example. I happened to be standing next to Ed Kyoto when he got the phone call. Had I not been standing there, it'd have been somebody else. So, but again, I put myself in that position. I got to being in this shop. I was there next to Ed because I had worked with him. So had I not done the work to get in there to begin with, I wouldn't have had that opportunity. But luck favors the prepared. It always does. There are some people who aren't going to be lucky, and I'm bummed for that. But I also know it's determination will win over luck. It may take longer, but if you're determined and you really keep doing it and you keep going after it, you're going to get there. It's the climb up the mountain. If you don't take the steps, you're never going to get up the mountain. And
that's how you become a stalker.
That's right.
Yeah.
If you really want to go on a date with Scarlett Johansson, determination.
Yeah.
Hey man, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
I
right?
agree with that. Yeah.
So write the stalker letter now to see what happens. You know what? Hey, it could happen.
You might get lucky.
Maybe Scarlett listens to our podcast. Maybe
hey,
hi Scarlett.
Want to talk to
That'd
us.
be sweet.
If you are, we just heard your voice on the SpongeBob SquarePants movie this morning. So
love you, Scarlett.
that's how close we are.
You're awesome.
So where can people? Go ahead.
I just watched. What was it that I said I watched? Oh, Hail Caesar last night.
So good.
Oh.
She's in that.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
good.
Yeah. All right, go ahead. Continue.
was the question?
So where can people find you? I know you said you don't have a big digital footprint, but where can people see your work if they want to?
Ooh.
Look on my website. There's like 4 or 5 projects that he's worked on for me.
I
We
think
need to
my-
get you an Instagram or something.
I think my only web presence is really IMDb. I'm not a computer guy. You know, I have my Facebook, but I ain't sharing that. You
Right,
know,
right,
That's for I don't want to have an.
I didn't
audience.
even know he was on Facebook until like maybe a year ago.
Yeah, and it's a code name. It's like, nope, I don't want everybody to know where I am. You can't.
Well, if they're
yeah.
if you're interested in seeing your work,
Screw
go
you,
rent
internet.
Team America.
Yeah, go watch Team America. And
Yeah,
then you can
right,
listen to this
and,
now you're on the internet.
Actually,
Langley.
yeah. If you want to see what I look like beyond the podcast, if you have the Team America DVD, I'm in the special features. I'm interviewed it a couple times in that. Same with the
Nice.
Spider-Man 2 one. I'm in that in a couple places.
Oh, really? Where would they find you in that?
The special features.
In the special features.
Oh, in the
Yeah.
special features. I
Yeah,
thought
at the end of the
actually in
special
actual film.
features. Yeah.
Gotcha.
There's a couple places in there. It's fun. Yeah.
And now, because we have video on this show, people are going to know what you look like.
Hide myself. Yeah.
I can blur your face out if you want, just to keep real weird.
No, it's all right.
That would be weird.
No, okay, but you by saying that, you do remind me. I have to step up to the times and actually get myself
I'll
out
help
there.
you with the internet.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, get an Instagram at the very least, because
Yeah,
then
and then
people,
just
if
put
you're working on
pictures of your
something
work on
cool, it's
there.
fun to share.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
thanks. I appreciate that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Just like with Instagram, if you want to have an Instagram account and be taken seriously as a professional, don't put pictures of your lunch and selfies and the flowers you see.
Right. Just work.
Like I have an Instagram that's just work stuff, and then I have another Instagram that's all my personal stuff, which I don't care who follows me on either, like whatever. But it's kind of nice to have that separation, you know, because like there's people out there that like I want to follow their work, but the second I start seeing posting pictures of their kids and their lunch,
You're
I
like, done.
unfollow.
Yeah.
No, I don't want that in my feed. I want to
No.
see your cool robots or your drawings or whatever. So just post that stuff. And since you don't really have much of a web presence, all you got to do is just put a picture up. I worked on this with a couple people or whatever.
I got a bunch of pictures.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Put
Oh,
pictures
yeah,
up,
yeah,
and then
yeah.
people will think it's cool.
All right.
Yeah.
There you go.
Thanks. Well, thanks for saying that. Yeah.
You do cool work.
Excellent. Frank, do we have? This is actually in July. When this
I
the
don't know
show.
when. I've so lost track over when we're putting these things out because this is the week leading up to E3, and I'm just trying to crunch and get a bunch of podcasts in.
Do you have people? Do you have people to thank on this show, or
what for E3?
no for Patreon?
Patreon. Oh, we got shit. I gotta pull up the Patreon. No, you know what? This is gonna be next month's Patreon list, so I don't even
Okay,
know.
yeah. So we won't even know.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna have to. I mean, I could thank who's on there now.
Yeah,
might as well.
let's thank them.
Hold on.
Yes, please. Yeah. Because thank you. Because you guys are awesome. It makes
Yeah.
this
Yes.
possible, right?
They make things possible.
yeah.
correct.
And
Yeah, so just so you know what Patreon is, Frank, what we do is there's this thing called patreon.com right there.
Patreon.com
And,
/CreatureGeek.
We kind of treat it as a tip jar. Like we will continue to do 2 podcasts a month, even if no one gives us money. But because people give us more money, we're doing 3 a month. And if people give us more, then we'll do 4 a month.
Ah, that's
Right.
nice. Well,
and-
thank you for whoever's contributing because
Yeah.
that makes this fun.
Yes.
So ready and Donato Sinico, Charles
Sinico,
Babbage,
yeah.
Sinico, jeez, Russell Young, Brian Warner, Raymond Stanek, Sarah Thompson, Gareth Gerwin, Ricardo Murillo, Simon Hollick, Gerard Libby, Mark Sesman, House Balestra.
Thanks, guys.
Love you guys. And our big dog heavy hitters, co-executive producers Jason Moore, Matthew Pickover, and Eric Seglum. We love you guys.
Woohoo!
Yes,
Love you
yes,
guys
yes.
a ton.
So that's going to do it for this episode of Creature Geek. If you, unfortunately, Frank Langley is not online, but he will be soon. Hopefully, by the time this is out, he will have an Instagram that you can follow, and we'll put that in the show notes. If you want to go check out Frank and I, we have a pretty big digital footprint. FrankIppolito.com or LenPeralta.com. We're also Frank Ippolito and Len Peralta on Twitter. A big thanks go out to Tested.com for giving us a home, and you can go to Tested right now, and you can comment on the show. Let us know what you think. And if you want to hear more of us, as mentioned earlier, go to CreatureGeek. Go to patreon.com /CreatureGeek. Give us a little bit of money. We're doing 2 shows a month right now. We'd love to do 3. We'd like to do 4.
Well, hey, maybe by this point, I mean, we're only like $20 away from getting it up to 3.
Yeah. Who knows?
So
Who
maybe
knows?
we'll
So,
get another one.
but we know we could always use more. So patreon.com/CreatureGeek. You can visit our blog, creature-geek.com. Thank you so much, Frank Langley, for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
We will see you on the next episode of Creature Geek coming up probably maybe
Whenever.
next week. Yeah,
Whenever.
We'll see.
See ya.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.